I knew without a shadow of a doubt, if I don't say something, there might not be anyone else who ever tells them their behaviors. Not that it's all based upon my opinions, but what if also this conflict is good? Because conflict, I'm
oh my goodness, say that again.
Conflict can be good. What if we got into like Gregorian chanting?
Let's do it. We can wear red robes and let's do it together. Okay, let's say a word.
That was kind of hard.
Let's try saying a word. Let's say morality. More. Okay. I'm alto. You're a soprano.
Morality. I think I hit an A sharp.
I think you hit the palate of your mouth with your tongue.
I think I did too. That was pretty resonant.
That was almost like the old COVID reaming that they used to give us.
It's kind of like...
Oh, I can't say COVID. That's right. Get edited. Let's say COVID. Okay, let's see. What other words should we say?
Tinka's enjoying it. She's like, this is really comforting.
Let's say...
This is for the ancients' pet. It's the recordings of us. It's like white noise.
We shouldn't be making fun of them because they are historically Christian chants. I recall the Gregorian... is that you say Gregorian?
Gregorian?
Yeah.
I mean, I make fun of modern worship, so... I feel like if I lived back in the day, I've been like, that's what she said.
Will you please
they sound
do
like...
something with the robe?
Why are they wearing robes? Yeah, that would have totally been me as a middle school boy. Like,
you say, okay, take the rope off your waist. It's just not fashionable.
Take the robe off.
Oh my God! I wonder what they wore underneath. Oh my goodness! I can't believe I said that. I meant that really, really.
Renee.
I meant like an astronaut. Do astronauts wear clothing under their?
That's a good question. Like a loincloth or something. How do they?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure.
Basic human rights, but also
like everything's gravity in the space.
So I guess everything goes from here to here.
Like you have to.
Leaked footage. Anna Gray makes a penis joke on the podcast.
You said the word.
What do you want me to say?
You're supposed to. Okay, no. Everybody knows you have to say the Latin genitalia.
Genitalia.
Yes, you can't.
Oh, there's cabin fuzz on the.
Oh, sorry, a little bit of fur. Never had. It's farm.
A little bit of fuzz.
There's nothing like farm fur to be wonderful. So how are you doing, Anna Gray Smith?
I'm all right.
What's my name?
What's my oh, my bad. That's my teleprompter. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I hear it a little louder? Renee Leonard Kennedy. How are you?
Hi.
Hey guys. How are you?
Hi.
Hi. God, that was so
Well, that was a really interesting podcast.
That was like a modern day evangelical girl speaker.
Really?
Yeah. Hey.
Oh, they make it.
Some women just like.
That's how I speak foreign languages. I exaggerate my mouth. Like I go, watch you,
mushy.
watch you, move on. You know, I mean.
I would love to see you in China though, with everyone serenading you because they love women with blonde hair and blue eyes.
Yeah, but they don't. They just take your picture.
Then they're like, okay, bye, Felicia.
Like in Latino countries, I've had serenading. In Miami, the foreign country of Miami.
Well, there you go. Yeah. We should find our foreign husbands there.
We could.
They could call us Mama and Papi.
And what's the other language that we know?
Privyet. Dadushka's grandpa.
Yeah,
Papa in Russian. And I think Ukrainian is Privyet, Papa.
Is it Privyet, hello?
Privyet, yeah.
What else do we know hello in? Say, there's Ukrainian.
French, bonjour.
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 And Italian is ciao. Is that
ciao?
Hello or goodbye?
Ciao.
Ciao is for hello and goodbye.
I think ciao is
I know
hi.
Hungarian. See ya.
See ya.
Yeah, that's hello and goodbye.
See ya. See ya.
Yeah,
sounds almost like see ya.
Yeah, that's how we remember it.
See ya.
I'm probably saying it wrong though.
See ya. That kind of helped my nerves a little bit.
What has been going on in your life? Anna Gray, we have not seen each other for years on end.
It's been a freaking hot minute because we've had a lot of different things.
I know we have things.
And things upon things, yeah.
And remember, didn't we say this year was going to not be our busy year?
Knock on wood. porcelain, ceramic. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it's ceramic.
Okay.
It's a garden suit.
Yeah, I've been good. Like, overwhelmed. I feel like I'm giving a Christian answer. I'm good.
Yeah.
Ugh, it's like such a churchy answer. Good.
Yeah, be real. And you would
really,
say hin how in Chinese?
I don't know actually how I'm doing. It's like I said earlier. Like,
wow.
I felt this deep need to, I don't want to say isolate from people, just like big group settings, but I've been overwhelmed in a good way. And I feel like I've been pursuing things that are life-giving, but I've been utterly mentally exhausted.
Oh, yes.
And physically. Like, it was hard for me to sit and find solitude, stillness in my apartment, which I know we had talked about on previous episodes. And now I feel like I'm just now nesting.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's
so
almost like everything else.
Home.
Yeah, I've made amends with situations at said apartment, which is, I have seen God at work in really strange ways that always defies human logic, and how I intend to see him, working.
So he's grown, he's stretched your faith during all this.
Absolutely. I think especially my prayer life.
It was a very menacing time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think especially my prayer life has felt not like something earth-shattering, or how a lot of people would probably picture it, like, oh, I'm on my knees, like, listening to, I don't know, angelic limelight music and, doing daily devotions every single day. But I feel like I've been really real, and it's felt more integrated in my life. Yes. And how have you been though? Renee, Leonard,
like you've been walking on the farm, but in your life.
Yeah. And I felt I've been feeling this deep sense of, I think, contentment with where I'm at. Whereas I kept feeling like I needed to run from, obviously, rather hostile situations.
Yes.
So it was this constant, like, I need to drive all the way to my hometown, 35 minutes to go to the coffee shop. And I found, started to find, community, like a home coffee shop. I know my barista's names, and everyone has cool, funky sleeve tattoos and Doc Martens, and I don't fit in, but they're all very sweet. Yeah.
I like being in an environment where we don't fit in, but
I do too.
We fit in.
Yeah,
we don't look the part.
Yeah, it's cool. So it's been interesting. Like, I felt myself, I think, in so many conversations with, non-believers, which has actually been really incredible. Like, spiritually speaking.
So in a way, it's because I feel the same way. It feels like I've been scattered.
Yeah.
But much like in the New Testament, when God ever scatters, all the people from Jerusalem, it's for good purposes.
Totally.
And so it sounds like there's a good purpose going on here.
It has been, and I think outwardly a lot of people would perhaps see it as, oh my gosh, you're isolating, like you're not in your usual groups, but it's been no sort of falling out with anybody. And I've actually been feeling like I've had deeper connections in one-on-one time. Like when I was here, my friend and her baby came over, and we spent the day catching up. So I don't know, I felt like I'm at a slower pace, and I'm okay with that. Whereas my mind from December to May felt like a million things.
Do you think in your case, not doing the physical injury and then not being able to do the marathons and the normal pace that you were keeping, do you think by changing the pace up changed your walk with the Lord? Yeah,
I really do. And I've been trying I've written a little bit about it on my blog, just in my time, being off of social media and not running, not having that structure, because I realized that was my entire structure. So I've been sleeping an hour later in the summer, whereas it would be a 4:30 to 5 o'clock alarm. And I haven't felt this need to have to drive myself into the ground, which was weird at first. It took getting used to, because the last 8 years I've had some sort of 5K marathon, half marathon, something constantly look forward to, and just having it stripped away, having all the exterior things stripped away. And I think the injury that still is unknown, I found a weird okayness with it. All right, I'll work with it, and I'm okay if I don't run another marathon. I don't actually care anymore if I get Boston.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
Yeah, so God kind of rearranged
Yeah.
a lot in your life.
Yep.
And
Still doing so, like still adapting, but
it's neat to be sidelined in the way that you feel. Because I remember that last one where I picked you up with your mom.
Yes.
Or was it, with your mom.
Yeah.
And you were on.
2 weeks after the other one.
You were, yes. I mean,
Yeah.
2 weeks in between marathons, and you were on the grass, and I was
my God.
you had finished to 22.
Oh, smelled awful.
And no, I did not notice that. All I noticed was like, okay, when am I going to, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut because she doesn't need, like, I
How do I
just
bring up
wanted
her
to be
toxic
there with you.
tendencies?
No, I just wanted to be there for you. And there's sometimes words just don't work. And
I
it's one of
was
those things.
so thankful for yours and Mom's your presence that day. Because I remember after Mom had to leave and you rode with me in my disgustingly smelling car and my like sweaty clothes. I feel like my whole car smelled like Marathon, which is not a good smell.
Not.
And we got lunch and talked and you were like, that's the thing though, is I think people like yourself, you're with people in seasons. You don't try to fix, you don't try to diagnose stuff. Like you speak truth and light when you see fit, but it's not in this like, I need to pry you, I need to fix you kind of way. Like you see people and you just,
It's really hard not to, because this is kind of our topic today.
Yes.
Yes, that was a good segue.
Wow, that is a good segue.
Should I start or should you start?
I think you should because you had this wonderful eureka of a voice memo. I mean, if you're okay with it.
Yeah, no, I really am.
Renee had some great thoughts on a voice memo because that's how we communicate.
We do.
Because you've been scattered too everywhere.
I didn't tell you. I'll tell you about that later.
No. That's good. In its due time.
In its due time. No, I mean afterwards, like after.
Oh, I thought you were joking.
Okay, so I was at a place, and I was scheduled to be at this place for this time. The time had been allotted, the time had been paid to be at this place, and I showed up as required of me. Already to do whatever, I'm not going to mention the situation, but there were other people involved who also are doing things there as well. But this was something that was out of my control, out of everybody's control, that set this time up for us, that we had to follow the rules that were put before us and do it at this time. So we did. And these other people were doing their things, and then somebody walked up to me, and I was really very nervous because, having to be a presence while other people were watching, it was a really weird thing. But I obviously the pressure was on. Sometimes I can, rise to the occasion. I didn't this time. And we had three takes. That's all I'm going to say. We had 3 takes. And so on the very last take, this is so me, Anna Gray. Well, before the very last take, after the second one, I was just doing something to, alleviate the stress in between. And somebody walked up to me, and I just said, "Man, I just keep blowing it. I just keep blowing it." Just real honest. And this person said to me, "Well, I just wish you'd hurry up because, I want to get on to what we need to be doing."
Oh, stab.
And I know this person, and so I part of me was like, oh, very apologetic. But at the same time, they moved on quickly. I did not move on as quickly because it all of a sudden I went, the pressure was on. I still had the third thing that we had to do. And I'm standing there, and so it was time to do our third thing. And the nerves, all I could think of is the back of that. Like, just, you get out of the way, Renee. You're taking up too much oxygen in the room. But at the same time, I had a responsibility to try to make this work in 3 takes. So I did everything as required of me. You fake it. It's good that we had acting skills.
You just nervous laugh it off.
Yeah, we had acting skills, and you go into a role and you do that kind of thing.
While you're withering away inside.
Yeah, and you're just like, you're just like pushing it out. Like, there's a time and place for that. This is what I'm doing. And at the very end, I do this unexpected, and I like totally ruined the ending. But everything up to that point was so usable. And at that point, that was the end of it. It was done. Whatever was going to be. And I didn't think anything of it. But I carried it. I didn't know I was carrying it. And this is really big with me. Is I left feeling very sad for, obviously not making, doing perfection, but I also was sad that this person had felt that way, like I was taking up space. I also felt bad for the people I was working with, that I didn't do my part of the ending. And so I left, in a very, as just me way, made sure everything was back to normal, and, goodbye, hello and bye, everything's okay. Sorry about that, sorry. So I get text later from someone on the team, and they said, I saw that you had some, you left. And I said, well, I hate letting people down. I hate disappointing myself, because I worked hard the night before trying to prepare for this. And so I didn't think anything more about it. So then I run into this person again, in a work situation, or kind of work situation. And I say, this happened to me. And this person was really upset on my behalf. And saying, no, you don't understand. You're paying this. You were paying for that time. You were told that time. You were supposed to use that time. That's not even right. And so what I couldn't even speak to you about. I can only speak to you after I talked to that person, because up until that point, the same day it happened, I didn't think anything about it. Until, I don't know what it is about showers. There's something about taking a shower.
Showers in the porcelain throne. Everything's just
it's like God
life
says,
makes sense.
I have you here. Now this is what's nagging on
Naked
you.
before him, really.
In so many ways. And so I was in there, and I was like, God, I don't know what is going on, and why what is nagging at me. What is it, And then I talked to him about the pride I had, and you immediately run to that, like I'm so prideful, and all this, and then all of a sudden it came on. It was like a spotlight on this situation. It was like he opened up like my mind to say, like, sweetheart, this is what it was that was bothering you, and I'm like, oh, that's bothering me, but what am I supposed to do about that? Because the time has already passed. I was very apologetic. And all I could do was bring it to him and say, Father God, this really bothered me that this person had commented that way. And so then, of course, the other conversation went on with the other professional, and then I called you. I memoed you, and I'm like, what, that just felt so wrong, so bad, and I didn't realize that I was supposed to feel this way until the other professional I was working with was really angry on my behalf, which I told you felt really good that someone actually, I had not, Anna Gray, had someone take up for me like that to my face, and I don't know how long.
And that kind of like authoritative position too.
Well, it was almost like this protective mode, not wrongly done.
Yeah,
but
of course.
Someone step up and say, no, this should not have happened to you. You should not have been spoken to like that. I didn't even notice it. It's like stubbing your toe and just keep walking, and it's hurting, but you just ignore it. And so I was like, wow. Okay, one, I'm shocked by that. And then two, I'm like, what was I supposed to do? Because we start this conversation about kindness. I said, well, my faith teaches me to be kind and to realize that people are in other places at that moment. They have their hurts, habits, and hang-ups, and not to assume and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, well, my faith, and he's, the same faith. He says, I was told that same thing, just kind of suck it up, buttercup kind of thing. He said, but no, there's a point where and he even talked about Jesus turning the cheek. And so it did lead me into this thing like, when do we stand? When do we not? How do we stand? How do you fight for yourself when no one else does? And when is it right? When is it wrong? And as a Christian, you know that other people are going through different things. But, we can't expect a pagan world to be kind to us. But when do you stand up? How do you stand up? What would Jesus do in this situation?
I think
that's when your response came back to me it was very interesting.
I didn't know if it was like good or bad. They're like, how do you feel about my response? Were you like, I agree? Were you like, disagree?
No, I the only thing
I
did disagree with was the time slot. There was a special time slot.
Oh, so, okay. That's the only clarification.
Yeah, there was not. In other words, our time slot preempted everything else.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
okay, that's what I needed clarity on.
But you would have said something. You say.
Oh, 1,000%.
What would you said? How would you handle it? When do we speak? When do we not? That is the big question. I mean, that's the moral of the story that I want to get at too, because I have. Most times I tried, I'm like the peacemaker. All right, it's okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we can be so used to being the one source of emotional support for everybody else, always being the safe place, always being the trusted source, always being the peacemaker. And like, I find myself in that place oftentimes too. And I mean, I still do struggle with that because there are times where, whether it's myself or somebody else, I have this deep visceral regret of wondering why I didn't say something and I should have. And just this voice in my head that makes me feel like such a coward. And I mean, I have...
Is it a godly thing, you think?
Yes.
Or is it just the fact that you've been pressed?
Both. I don't think anger is inherently a wrong emotion, though.
Right.
I know I've talked about it on all of our so many episodes. I don't see emotions and inwardly how you feel towards something as good or bad. Right. It's what you do with it and how you ruminate in it. I think that...
And Michelle Gallimore reiterated that.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. I was actually just thinking of her in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, this makes me remember our episode with her on trust and betrayal. And I'm no pro with this topic either because it's something I'm still learning. But a couple years ago, I realized how actually... Yeah, like 6-7 years ago on the dating scene or a couple relationships, I realized in my earlier 20s, like how much of a doormat, how much of a fake person I felt like I'd been becoming due to not standing up for myself, because I would feel this inner resentment after even just small comments were made. Nothing that was insanely degrading. Some things, yes. But those smaller things that feel almost like a paper cut or the stub toe where you're like, this really stings, this really hurts, and I can't really see, there's no catastrophic damage done, but this is altering everything about how, I'm walking, or like you're still feeling it even if it's really minute. But I realized how much resentment I was having towards someone. At least if it was friends, loved ones, because or just people in passing, like when I'd hear a remark or something, or I felt like I was being shredded. But really, I would say within the last year, there were a couple situations where in my heart and soul, and it was something where I was figuring out, is this just like my anger coming out, or is this like holy righteous anger? Because of course I like to always say it's righteous anger.
Yeah.
But I realized something kind of profound in that I was not only doing myself a disservice, not that it's only about myself, but the other person, because I was enabling their behavior.
Yes.
And I started thinking, what if no one has ever told them this?
Yeah.
What if I'm the only one? And there's obviously truth and love, which I don't always do well. I didn't do super well 2 years ago in some specific situations. But though there were some situations where publicly to my face things were said, speculated that kind of how Michelle talks about when your values feel infringed upon inside, gut reaction. And so at first it was just met with logic, or as, you know, some other people described, they said, you were very diplomatic about that issue. But then from there, I probably said one too many colorful words, you know, no screaming match, nothing like that. But I'm like, maybe, you know, the F-bomb could have been tailored a little more, which if you haven't seen our episode on the F-bomb, you should check it out.
Yes, it goes way back, doesn't it?
It does go way back in the archives, but all of that to say, I was realizing that I was actually contributing to the problem that I was having by not addressing it, because it's really uncomfortable to point out how something's made you feel to somebody else, or even to call out things for what they are, and hey, that's really unkind. Or, and I think focusing on the action too, more so than the person's character, like you're a bad person, you are a toxic person, like how you said that, how that came across sounded very toxic, you know, or whatever the issue is. But also if it's enabling a behavior that is inappropriate and that you're seeing happen to other people, which is really where it hit home for me. Because I can take things to a certain level, though I started like taking up for myself more and probably defending myself too much in some instances. But when I started seeing other people who were innocent blood being shited upon very unjustly, such as in your situation.
I can stand up for somebody else.
Right.
I really don't like that.
But it's so hard, like for ourselves. It's almost like you can feel selfish, or, oh, what if I'm seen as needy? And for me, it was always a question of, am I going to be seen in a different light?
And also, how does it, when you were going through all this, how does it feel? Because it's like you can see when it's somebody else a little clearly.
Yeah.
But when it's going on in you, you're thinking, okay, is this emotional? Yeah. I mean, like a zillion thoughts are going through your head. Like, is this logical? Is this, you know?
Well, I think it's because we can't be as objective with our own selves, you know, because how you talk about this person standing up for you and saying, no, that's not okay, you know, or just like when you confide in someone, or if somebody else is present when a really terrible situation unfolds. I think, for me at least, if I'm used to being a chameleon and wanting to keep peace and politeness just so no one's mad at me, just to keep people liking me so I don't come across in the image or light I want to be perceived as, I can question myself and doubt myself a lot. I struggle with self-doubt so much, which I'm working on, but
what do you, explain what to you self-doubt is, because that's interesting.
I think it's where I've talked to Dan a lot about this too. Wellspring Dan, we love you, Dan. He actually told me this back in the springtime. He said, I think you really seem to struggle with doubting yourself. For example, if you know something to be biblical, moral, and true, yet you start to inwardly shred that to think, well, you know, you almost start to compromise on your own self and your values and your morals, which I think all integrate biblically, you know, for believers. I think self-doubt, though, is where you doubt your fundamental beliefs, truths, values, what you stand for, and you wonder if, even though a situation has happened or words were said that were clearly inappropriate, that were clearly wrong, you somehow start to almost doubt the validity of that to levels where you end up shrinking back into people-pleasing doormat. Like, that's me. And I say all this,
I default to doormat, or I default to not being worthy. every
feel
single
that.
time. And I'm not saying, but then I also go on the
man.
other side of feeling, I'll just say, God, my pride is incredible. So I go on this spectrum. I think maybe there's some sort of ADHD going on inside of my emotions.
No, but I feel that. I understand, because there's the one hand where you're wondering, is this my pride that I can't say something because I just want to be liked? But then I think there is hurt beneath that, because I think sometimes one situation or really poisonous words can magnify pain that's been buried so deep or that you've heard. I don't know. I mean, do you feel that way? Do you feel like you hear other things, or do you ever have like flashbacks to experiences or
I think
with people?
I think we all do. Those emotional things resonate back to whatever it was. So in the relationship I was in, I realize what you're saying. You're very, very right. If we don't speak the truth in love, we may be doing, after praying about it or thinking about it, or even just a quick prayer, doing the other person a disservice by not bringing it up. Not only that, it may be just something that needs clarifying.
Right.
We may be making a big, mountain out of a molehill, when a little clarity on it to say, what did you mean by that? And you realize that's not what they were talking about at all. So clarity can really do something. But then there's a point in some relationships where you realize your words have no bearing. And when I say that, I'm not talking nagging, because nagging.
You just mean like familial relationships, romantic, any kind of relationship,
where you've said you've spoken your piece before, in a loving and kind way, a biblical way. You've prayed about it, and it's for some reason not accepted, and the behavior continues. I mean, there's nothing sometimes you can do
except boundaries and permanent
boundaries on your
permanent no contact if need be.
Well, I mean, seriously, boundaries on your part.
Yeah. No, I feel that though.
But when you do have a chance to do this, you struck on something. So self-doubt kind of resonates as a logical and emotional thing.
I think so.
But then you said something which it was like, oh my goodness, the people pleaser. You go, I don't have to be liked by everybody. It's a real painful thing to be a people pleaser.
It is.
It is very painful.
Well,
it doesn't serve well. So, I mean, what are the words there? How do you?
No, I agree completely, because I think people have the idea of people pleasing as this idea of, oh, you must just be a really inauthentic, fake person, and not true. And I disagree with that. I think people pleasing can also be genuinely wanting the best for people and to really want the things you value so much inside, like, joy, love, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control, all the things you want to see that reflect in other people. And this ideal of, I guess, just harmony among peers and people. Because I would never look at you, for example, and think, oh yeah, that's just like prideful and selfish, I mean, I know there are things of our own hearts we struggle with, but also I know your character, and,
I struggle.
I mean, I do too, but I'm saying, like, objectively, you're not a fake person, like your words, your actions reflect each other. You don't say one thing, live a life entirely different.
Well, but this whole thing, and I want to ask you if this is what happened to you, because it sounds like something happened to you to examine this whole thing, the way you were doing it.
Yeah.
So this thing put a real punch in me that I have now, no joke, been just praising the Lord and just saying, you just keep pointing out my motives, my bad motives. And I really appreciate that. Just keep doing that. Point out my prideful situations. Because I realize it's one of those things where I'm in the book of Jeremiah, where it's, it's such a, the young woman who delivered Instacart saying, she said, and I understand what she says, it's such a thick book. I said, yeah, it is, it's coming to the awareness that the Lord is pointing out my motives, pointing out my prideful things, not to go ba 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 ba. But I've asked him to do it. He's answering a prayer. I've wanted this for a very long time, because it makes me wonder about motives and all this. And this is what this is all about, this conversation, is in the end, what is our motive for responding?
Yeah.
What is our motive for being silent? What is our motive for shutting up or standing up? So now I've interrupted. What's the motive for
I feel like you're on a good roll. I was engrossed. I was subscribed.
Well, no, because I'm very, very curious on how we arrive at the motive of standing up. I have stood up before. But sometimes it's to no avail, and then what do you do then? Or, a lot of times what happens, all of us second guess it. We're in the shower going, why didn't I say that?
Yeah. If only I could, when I'm writing in my journal, have said to them.
I know, you hindsight.
The sentence would have been good.
It would have been the
good
perfect,
transitive verb right there.
just lay it on thick. A good adverb in the beginning. It would have been just peachy. But no, how do you do that?
I mean, that's something I'm honestly still learning. And I think
you're different than you were.
Yeah.
Because you said, I stand up for myself.
Well, because I experience a couple specific situations that were so bad, in my heart, in those situations, I knew without a shadow of a doubt, if I don't say something, there might not be anyone else who ever tells them their behaviors. Not that it's all based upon my opinions, but what if also this conflict is good? Because conflict, I'm a
oh my goodness, say that again.
Conflict can be good. What if this conflict is for good? I was just talking to a friend about this yesterday. We were talking about relational things, communication, etc. But conflict doesn't have to be bad. I think it's in how you go about it. I think it actually can cause both parties to really examine who you are on the inside. And like you said, your motives, which echoing that, I think is probably the most important, because I think your motive for saying something or not has everything to do with what's happening internally, and if it's for selfish ambition or if it's just to,
vain conceit.
Yeah. Or if there's no fruit to come from it. And fruit doesn't always look like just, comforting, warm, fuzzy words. Sometimes love is like really gritty and tough. Again, truth and love, I think there's a way to convey it. But I think at the end of the day, if it's with someone's better interest in mind, not to try to be the person who convicts them, because only the Holy Spirit can convict. He can use us as a vessel, but it's not like, I'm going to send them this sermon I listened to, and I'm going to use this perfect, scripted thing and hammer it into them so they just, get it.
And don't forget a podcast. Always send a podcast.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, or when you're in church and someone's like, oh my gosh, so-and-so needs to hear this sermon. I'm like, don't send them this sermon. No. Hey, I thought you might like this, or subtweet. It's like, maybe you need to be convicted.
As soon as I think that, I'm like, I need to perk my ears up.
I have experienced this. Yeah. So I think you have to check what your motives are for yourself, but also the other person. What are you wanting, just to feel a sense of pride and justice and that you get the last word in something? Which there's done that.
The biggest thing is having the last word.
Yeah, that's me. I used to be kind of obsessed with having the last word.
See, I'm not a last word person.
I'm not anymore, but I used to be. And I just
look and I'm like, I realize this is a never-ending story.
Yeah, that's really healthy though to realize.
Well, no, because it just all of a sudden it becomes circular, and you realize
you're like, it's not going anywhere.
Someone's going to burst a blood vessel.
But that kind of is setting a really healthy boundary, not engaging in that. Even though it's.
Yeah, but you come to that realization. I think what you're saying, and I really like this idea. Is that it's a process.
Yeah, it
is. Because you have gone through this change of process in so many ways, even to the point of, and I don't think it's any coincidence, with the torn muscle, the marathons, the changing of the coffee shops, the idea of the menacing situation that you had, a couple months ago. All these things have come together in this perfect, I don't want to say a perfect storm, but it's this perfect thing that the Lord, like you said, the conflict in the sense has come at you. Now what are you going to do with it? And the Lord has used this to shape your character and grow you.
Yeah, and
it's a process.
No, it really is. And like you said too, like sometimes we can see ourselves as, oh, I'm the one creating conflict because I'm going to address this issue. Yeah, sometimes the conflict comes to us and it's like, okay, portion of this is out of my control, portion of it is, and what do I do with it? Because you're at the, I can't tell my muscle to just, hey, can you mend? I can't just force someone's hostile feelings towards me to just snap, eradicate. But something I've realized, and this is going to sound so cliche, I already want to vomit in a paper bag from what I'm about to say.
Let me go get one.
So, and when I use the word love, I mean it straight up just from the Bible, but some of these same situations, with these two particular situations where I was labeled some very awful things. I'll just give some examples. We'll keep everybody anonymous, okay? In the last couple years and in the last couple months, there are some situations where I've been unjustly labeled and speculated against, and not just in a superficial kind of way, but things about my character that were very untrue. Things that...
To your face.
Yes, to my face or in front of people.
In front of a group.
In front of a group of people, yes. Like,
let's have a group takedown. Yeah.
Right. Being told that you deserve certain treatment or words because, you do. Well,
dog.
I was up to you, but you really deserved it. Yeah. Or in the last couple months, sexual remarks, which is from this person who I think we touched on this in a podcast, but labeling you as things when you request space, like that you're a psycho and that they can't stop thinking about your shorts, your tiny shorts, things that are really sexual, things that are extremely...
not that you would invite that anyways, but things that are just totally, like, they broke the boundary.
They really did, to where it wasn't like they asked, in some of these situations, asked for further clarification first on something. It was, you are this, you are that. And I'm trying to think of absolute examples, but like also I don't want to expose anybody too much. But in the past couple months, like the very sexually degrading remarks to him, like, I want nothing to do with this person who lives very close to me ever again. And in these situations, though, I told my mom it was her fault because she prays for people's salvation.
Why did you?
Dang it, Mom! Yeah, and what makes me want to vomit is I've realized that love is literally what can diffuse, like, people's ill intentions sometimes.
Wow.
It is, and I don't mean love in the New Age way of like, just accept everything and people for who they are. But there's a situation with one person a couple weeks ago where, and this is the same person who like was basically banned from my life, like literally authorities contacted, those kinds of levels, rolling up to my place, very uncomfortable, mentally shattering for about a month because I was just incredibly stressed, sleep insomnia. And this was the second situation where I was actually sitting in a public place somewhere and they happened to be there. And it really was a coincidence. And my instinctive reaction was, okay, I'm going to figure out how to just get up and leave. But it was like this still small voice in my head was like, no, stay. And so we end up actually having contact again after months. And I remember...
Did you feel unsafe?
At first, yes. Viscerally, I was like, they could do...
But you were in a public place where
I was. It was kind of secluded. And my first thought was, they could kind of do...
Anna Gray.
They could do... I know.
Yeah.
No, I know.
Okay, so we don't
It was kind
recommend this.
It was kind of secluded.
Yeah.
But it was public enough where I'm like, okay, someone else could come here. You know, it's not like I'm at their house or something.
Right.
So at first I felt unsafe. They started playing screamo music. And the speaker... I had an earbuds, and this, oh my gosh, really how cliche everything I'm going to say is makes you want to throw up, but it's just the honest to goodness truth. I started just praying though, and I put in my earbuds. I pretended I didn't address them, didn't say anything. I felt oddly confident knowing I had the Holy Spirit within me. And this song by Plum comes on that's literally called I Love You. And it's like this song, it's actually really good lyrics. You should Google it. No joke, I can faintly hear screamo music, and it's just this, I feel uneasy, and I'm praying, I'm like, God, do I leave? Should I leave?
Right.
I don't know if I should, or do I stay? Should I stay, or should I go?
Really,
you know?
Yeah.
And I just started praying for some sort of heaven to meet earth kind of answer, which I don't always see. And it was so hot outside too. I had been like kind of dehydrated that day. I've been really busy. But I was like, okay, I'm going to stay outside just a little bit longer, still get the sun. And I had this whole public place to myself too. And I'm like, of course they like happen to be here.
Right.
And so I have this song going that shuffles onto my Spotify by Plum that's talking about no matter what anyone's done, I still love you. Like God's love covers all. And I hear this like screamo music. Clearly I know they're playing it to like annoy me. And I just sit back and I just have my earbuds in. Doesn't faze me. And no joke, I just started, so I'm praying. I'm like, God, can you just show me if I should leave? Or can you let them know I don't hate them? And I'm like, I don't know how though. I'm not going to start talking to them. And suddenly I see them approach and they have something in their hand and I thought it was a beer. And they're like, would you like one of these? And I took out my earbuds and I just said, I kind of laughed. I said, oh, is that spiked like water? Haha. And they're like, no, it's just coconut water. And I kind of, declined. I was shocked they'd said anything to me because it's been months. And then I felt it pressed upon my heart. I was like, okay, they probably think I'm going to start like debating them or confronting stuff again. And I don't know why. I don't know if it was God, but it felt like God. It was this nudge in me that was like, ask them like how they've been doing, like really. And so I took out my earbuds. I was like, so-and-so, how have you been? Like, how's your soul?
You did say that?
Yes. And they looked really shocked. Yeah, they looked really shocked. They looked really shocked. And we like talked for just a minute, but it was good. Like I could tell they very much felt on edge, like I could lose. They actually have a lot at stake against them that if I'm approached in certain ways, like they will lose certain things.
Privileges.
Yep.
Yeah.
However, this was not a case of that. And I knew in my heart that it was literally a coincidence where we were. And so I think they were shocked that I said a word to them because my last words were, quote, F off, period. Yeah.
But your last words this time were, how was your soul?
And so we're talking. Nothing crazy, nothing inappropriate. It felt safe to me. And so they offered me, are you sure you don't want one? And so it's funny, I'm like, here I am dehydrated, and this person who ruined my mental health is offering me coconut water.
Like he's offering
and I took it. I'm like, this is the peace treaty. The coconut water is the peace treaty. They're not reacting how I would perfectly envision in my head, which on the topic we're talking about, I think we also expect of people so many times, like in standing up for yourself, them to react in the exact way I do. But we had this whole conversation and, odd, like, I don't want to say amends, but without saying the words. And so we had like a kind of spiritual conversation for like 10 minutes and then it starts raining. And I'm like, that's my sign. Like, I'm going to leave now. So all that to say, I had this thought, like, love really does can diffuse and disarm. Love can disarm people too. We often think of it as, okay, if I'm aggressive towards them, or if I just like am really blunt and sharp and put them in their place, then they'll get it.
But you think about it, that scripture, it's not against the people of this world, it's against the powers, the dominions of darkness.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I don't advocate talking to a situation like, I mean, we don't advocate
Most people
that
wouldn't,
as immorality to do
Exactly,
this.
yeah.
However, I do think, you think about this world, you think about missionaries. And by definition, I was talking to Lily. I said, Lily, you don't have to go overseas. I think it's very important what you did. I love that she loves going overseas. But, you know, it can be anywhere you go. It's a coffee shop, ballroom, you know, your track, your racing, biking. But in this case, you think about it, missionaries of any type take a risk every day. I mean, this was very risky, and I'm not advocating it. I find it fascinating, though, the point behind it.
Right, and I'm not advocating it either, like saying, oh, if you've been in an unsafe situation, if you've been abused, if there has been, I'm definitely not. This was like coincidence.
But what I'm saying is we're not advocating it, but at the same time, missionaries, being a Christian,
it's integrated in life. It's not just...
It is not meant, we're not meant to just sit around in our holy huddle and be safe. You know, there's a reason you're going to a coffee shop that is different than the one that was safe to you, where you were meeting in the holy huddle. Now you're in a different kind, you're sharing your faith. You know, anytime we go out into the world, it could be considered unsafe.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, in this case, it was safe, but at the same time, you were bringing... I mean, the idea you said to him, how is your soul? You changed the whole temperature of the conversation to levels that he may never... It sounds like you had more talk on spiritual things.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny because...
Not that
it was oddly him
dating.
giving me coconut water that gave me the peace and asking that question. So I'm like, here's this person who you consider perpetrator. I know that sounds like a whole like rabbit trail spiel, but to echo what we're talking about and like, you know, just dealing with people, you know, and situations, and especially when we've been wronged. And there's a time and place for it all. You know, I don't think with every single situation, there's necessarily has to be, oh, this moment of mending it all. Some things really do need to be severed. Like the hard truth of the matter is that there are certain, I think, relationships that even if it's just for a season, it's okay if they're severed because there's work to be done that like God can do in their lives that we don't carry that power.
And we can actually get in the way. I feel often that I can get in the way of someone else's what God wants to do with them if I'm trying to make it better.
Right. And I think it's hard, especially when you objectively can see something that someone's just not getting, you know, or they're mentally not there. But I don't know if it's like answering the question there if I'm going way too off, like what we're initially
I think what's
talking about.
The standing up you're talking about is not fighter girl stance.
Like I'm a boss babe,
like warrior girl, you know, princess. The standing up you're having is a different thing altogether. You're standing up in love, talking to God about it, asking God, what should I do here? You know, how should I move and live in this moment of my being? That's a different kind of stance. I mean, you've got the power of the Lord God Almighty. I mean, that's the book of Jeremiah. How many times? He was ranting at the Lord today in chapter, I forget what chapter it was, but he was saying, well, basically, like I'm doing this, and nobody likes me, and I don't have a family, you know, and all this other stuff. I don't know if he had that part, but he didn't. But he was listening to the Lord. So when he had to speak hard truths to people who's listening to the Lord, when he was speaking, when the Lord said, no, say to them, you know, sweet things, he would say that. And then he goes, but I'm not going to fulfill this because they're not going to turn their hearts. But in your case, you're listening and you're standing in a different kind of way. You're not standing up saying, I'm right, you're wrong, get out.
Right. You know? Well, and I think there's a time and place for it too. Like I think there are situations, and with how this one initially ended, I don't have any regrets. I don't, because
like if it
the
were
truth
to
is
continue,
that
it's not
if you're just like, oh, let's just dance around it. No, sometimes you do need to say it like it is, especially if you have said it multiple softer ways. It's like this perfect harmony of soft and strong, like where you're not wanting to just sever someone's limbs off, but you're not wanting to be a passive doormat either. And it's like this dance in harmony, and it's weird, and it's something I'm still learning, because I used to be on the extreme of I didn't know how to stand up for myself. I would just pity laughter stuff off and pretend I was fine. Like, I remember when I was 17, this woman had this interview with an agent. She's like, your skin, it was just like to my face telling me how terrible my skin was. And like, I remember I just like kind of laughed, and, you know, I mean, she wasn't like terribly rude, but I remember just feeling so inauthentic, like, wow, I just nervously laughed and that really wasn't funny. And I think we do that. It's like for sake of peace and politeness, like, you know, we kind of wear this metaphorical, I don't know, costume of sorts to be like, you know, I don't want to show them I'm weak or offended. And so I'll just laugh it off for peace and politeness, even though it hurt. But it's like you also being too strong where it's, you know, there's no softness of your heart or desire for someone's better interest. I don't know. It's something I'm learning. How do you feel about it all? I'm rambling.
It's a worldview thing that the Lord, I think you have it there. I mean, he brings love. God is love. But he's justice and grace. You know, so it's one of those things. It's the person who, you know, makes sure that justice is served on somebody who's killed their child or something like that. God forbid, what an awful story, but we've seen it before. And then that very same person, after seeing that justice was served, would show up in the prison and minister to this person's heart and forgive them. I mean, that to me is the epitome of standing up for yourself. You know, offering forgiveness to somebody who is undeserving, but then again, what have we received?
Right, exactly, you know?
And so modeling that, now I think it's easier in a same-sex kind of situation. I really am hesitant, you know, what to do with the male-female thing, because I know for years I didn't engage because it was just easier, and I wanted the peacemaker to just work. And there are certain situations where you can't, you know, or it's just not worth the pain, you know, the emotional fallout that happens, and that kind of gets built into the relationship. What would you say to that person who's in a relationship that they're not being physically abused, obviously, because that's a situation where you immediately get out. And even to the point, I forget what Michelle Gallimore said about the emotional abuse, but not emotionally abused in the other than every now and then on slide comments or things like that. What would you say to that woman? How does she stand up to a loved one?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't...
Like in a non-abusive
Yes, and we don't
kind
even
of
have to talk
context.
husband
Yeah,
thing. We could
sure.
talk, you know, family member. We can talk brother, sister, you know, son, daughter, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also not a pro at this either, but personally, and I've like been here in different ways before, with friends, family. Okay, definitely bring up how things make you feel first. Setting the boundaries, and this is what I've done. I'm not saying do this, you know, we're not all cookie cutters, but telling them how it makes me feel and what the parameters are for a conversation, on it, especially if it's trying to reconcile something or bring up an issue. For example, like yelling, no way. I told some roommates in LA that too. It's like, if you're going to yell, we need to do this at a calmer time.
There's something about
setting
yelling,
the energy of the room.
I don't know.
Sarcasm
That
and
will
yelling
shut
can't do
you
it.
down.
It does.
It shuts my heart down in a heartbeat. Like I hear yelling and I'm on the floor. That I'm like that little 5-year-old.
We're Tink with.
I'm like that little 5-year-old. Yeah, like Tink listening to a storm.
No, it is. It's like yelling, cynicism, sarcasm. None of that. So I think setting rules too, and there's nothing controlling about that. But it's like protecting your your energy and space. And I say energy like in a very spiritual kind of context, and from there, if it's respected, great. Have the conversation, may it be a fruitful relationship. And if it's constantly crossed, I really think there is a time where, and I've actually been in this place, not with family, but in some other regards, such as the situation I just mentioned, but in a couple others where no contact is okay for a certain period. I'm okay with that. And I let that be known too, like, hey, if this is handled this way, or if these are the expectations that are had of me that I clearly cannot fulfill, this is not going to work. So, and, in an instance like that, it's not as harsh as, for my prior situation where my last words are F off, period.
Yeah, that was a harsh time.
Which, let's know your thoughts on that in the comments. I'm just kidding. Actually, I'm not. Please roast me. And I think sticking to it, honestly, sticking to the boundary, sticking to the protection of not just your values and space, but in such a way that you are not allowing somebody else to override your core values, biblically speaking.
Yeah, that's really important.
Because if become a doormat to someone that's enabling their behavior, what's really going to break? I think space is okay, and if they're ready to come back, and whatever given time, with the healthy boundary set, that's good. And I don't know. Sometimes there are situations, kind of like getting coconut water from this person, like, wow, I didn't think we'd be here at the same time. Where I think you have a deep knowing of like, okay, even if they're not apologizing in the way I had anticipated or I want as a believer or my ideal, their actions are kind of speaking for itself. But for a non-abusive situation, those can sometimes be hardest because it's not so like glaring, like it is, but it's not.
Well, I think, when you think about it, Matthew 18 always really, really, really works in the really hard times. And I think that's what you were exercising in that situation when it was really bad. So you go to that person first and you tell them and you set the boundary and you say, or whatever needs to be said in a godly way. You pray. Sometimes you don't have the luxury except for just throwing up a quick help. And the Lord knows what you're asking for, and you do it then. And then if that doesn't work, and you feel that it needs to be addressed again, you bring somebody with you. And then if not, then at that point they say bring it before the church. But that would be up to your pastor, I imagine.
Well, and if it's a believer, non-believer too, because if it's not a believer, that's
that is nothing.
There's
but
no
I do think
basis.
it still works with pagans. And when I say pagans, I say that very lovingly. That's somebody who's not a Christian, as they refer to Gentiles in the Bible. So I do think it still works. I think the idea of going to somebody, I think the deal is, Anna Gray, is looking at that person, and this is probably what happened, maybe what happened at the park with, you see that person in a different light as a person that God has created. And this is where I'm back in my situation, where I can leave it, and where I was trying to talk to the other professional about it, which I had never planned on bringing up to him about this. It just popped out of my mouth. I was like, oh, golly, this must really still be bothering me. But I looked at this person's as a person who is created by God, who is not walking with the Lord, who also comes from a history of things not going right in her life. Not that it makes it right, but there's I think with the expectation of a Christian, we should go in it with a deeper sense of the picture. Like, okay, wait, I have the Holy Spirit living in me. What are you telling me about this? You know, just like you did. Like you checked with them.
Well, I'm curious for you, if you could go back to the situation where you were in your public space and you were like, felt under the microscope, what would you have said?
I don't think I would have changed anything.
Really?
Nope.
Yeah.
Because stuff like that, it points out the things in me that I need to see. But it also points out to me a lot of times that kind of breaks your knees and makes you go, okay, that person needs my prayers. You know, something's not going right for that person to be speaking to me like this. You know, there's whatever. And then, yes, it was pointed out to me there might have been arrogance on that person's part. Well, they're da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, you know, that's not mine. I don't know. All I know is that, you know, you look at somebody deeply and you think, okay, this person is a lot like me, probably. You know, there's loneliness in there. There's all these other things. The world hasn't really, well, unlike for me, I have Christ. She does not, you know. So to me, I just wouldn't have changed it. I would have, you know, would I've gone to my dance? I thought it was fascinating the way it played out, that I went to the professional and he took up for me. That was interesting. So I kind of had like a dual lesson. Like I wouldn't do anything differently with that professional. But the other one, it just made me kind of go, yay for the men in the world who stand up.
Do you feel like do you feel like God answered that in a weird way by having this other like male figure stand up for you?
Yes, there was almost validation, like, okay, you were reading this right, that shouldn't happen. So that was good. It was also interesting and very telling to know that I respect men who stand up for women in a right and wrong situation. I would respect a woman as well, standing up for a right or wrong situation. Because sometimes, you know, particularly with single women, we feel like we have to stand up for ourselves.
Yeah.
Every single time.
Yep.
And usually it's true, but then what I learned about you sitting on the bench, no, the Lord was standing up for you. You know, we're not alone.
It's this deep feeling like He sees you even when you feel like people can say something, you're like, it wasn't enough to like tell him it was wrong, but like, I don't know how He has those strange answers for us, like through other people, and like, no, you're still seen. You know?
I don't know. It's a weird season for both of us, because I think we're coming into this really this season where just learning to walk and talk and be with Him it's so rich. It's not always comfortable.
No, oh my gosh.
You know, He's not a tame lion.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But it is really fascinating. There's a part of me, you know, that sat outside, I forget what it was, Saturday, and I'm like, Lord, I'm really okay in my singleness. You know? I'm really okay.
I subscribe to these thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but in the meantime, I was like, but I'm not okay with Anna Gray and all my daughters being single. Please send them really great men. I was like, okay, I really am. You know, if I am to live whatever years you give me, as a single, I'm okay with that, Lord. I really am more than okay with that, because I have you. And I'm going to be walking with you for eternity. So the deal is good.
Deal is good. The ROI. The Holy Spirit's ROI is pretty good.
Really very, very, very blessed.
Great insurance, life insurance.
So what would you say the moral of the story is in all this?
Oh, I feel like there's so many. I literally on every episode pawn it off on you because it's like, it takes me a while to think about it because I'm like, oh, it's so much. A lot of things. Dylan, you can cut the like pondering part.
Well, I kind of like the pondering part, but I you know what I see?
It's probably good
The
to see
moral
me
of the
suffocating
story
in silence.
is that you sat on that bench and you didn't make a quick decision. I mean, not that, you know, to run off would not have been a bad thing.
I wrestled with the Holy
or
Spirit.
just to leave would not have been a thing. But the fact is, no matter what, let's take that piece out of it. You were talking to God.
This person,
You
I
were
will.
leaning on the Lord.
And this person is someone who like, and I won't go on a whole long spiel, but it's like looking at a rabid raccoon and saying, "Come here, kitty, kitty," you know, situation. I'm like, whoa, keep a distance. But I very much wrestled with the Holy Spirit, yes. And just as you were talking about self-examination and asking God to bring out the things in you, I, you know, made the mistake in prayer saying, God, help me to exist in love. Help me to love what's right in front of me. And I'm thinking, oh, the lovely people in my life, my friends, and a lot of that, yeah. And, you know, this new city I moved to in January, and I forgot the part about loving your enemies.
Oh, yeah, that part.
No, seriously. And it was like, I started praying for my heart to be soft. And I can sometimes pray things, but have parameters on that. And again, I'm not.
You have but God, but God.
Yeah, but God.
Not the right but God does this, but you're like, but God, I can't.
But God, I can't. Yeah.
I can't do it that way.
And I just think it's funny because it's these situations you really don't expect.
Yeah.
But I also, it's like God worked through that person too, though, because they literally handed me coconut water. And I'm like, this is the peace treaty. Like, this is what I prayed. This is it. They are making the effort. And so.
To be kind.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm not saying this as a way of saying, yes, they're a believer, but I saw like the Holy Spirit. And when I say in them, I'm not meaning like, yes, they're a believer, they're walking in the Spirit, but like, as in that's something that felt like this kind, holy act, like that reflects the things of Scripture. I'm like, okay, this person with no moral basis, who has something. So it was like, I also, my pride and how hardened my heart can become, because my mother was like praying for this person's salvation. She's like, I would say all these things like, yeah, I can't stand them. Yeah, if we ever pass each other, we just like, I hold my shoulders back really, really far and stand really, really tall. I just don't look at them.
You reach 5'5".
I was starting to like savor that feeling to her. I'm like,
the fighter girl.
I'm not scared. Where I went from like, I'm a shell of myself, I'm terrified, to I'm not scared of you. And I'm going to really just make my posture extra tall.
Well, and it's not a true you.
No, it's not. And
but you know what I'm thinking, the moral of the story is to realize each person has value because God has created them, which we've mentioned about. But you know, I don't know about you, but we need to remember we were pagans.
Yeah.
You know, and we don't know where this person is on their walk towards the Lord. Or any of these people. And so the idea of standing up for herself just to be right, just to have her voice heard, just for these motives is not really a true redemptive story. The true redemptive story is battling it out in love with the Lord, letting Him take over, and realizing you may be one. I think what they say, people need 8 touches of the Lord to come to Him, you know, or just even ask, you know, are you there? You know, who knows where you were on that spectrum? And I don't know how they come at that. What did they do? Take a poll? I have no idea.
Let's get a statistic like COVID.
Yeah, so I have no idea. But the idea that God is using that moment in a far deeper way than had you taken a stance, taken the fighter girl stance, had I taken, hey, that's not nice. Don't talk to me that way. Stance. So I'm thinking that is it. That is it. We are people on mission, and we have no idea where that person's standing. And yes, we should stand up, but who knows what the greater picture is when we stand? But God.
Let he who is blameless cast the first stone.
Yeah, but God is the one who tells us how to act. And if we lean on him, he will.
Absolutely. Expose the things of our hearts. And, sometimes I think when you ask him to soften your heart, it's not that you're saying, I'm a doormat, do whatever. We can have the same relationship. Signs? No. Keep the same boundaries. That's okay.
Yeah.
I still have my same boundaries with this person and other people from a couple years past.
Right.
However, boundaries also have a door sometimes. So, I think there are also parameters where your heart can become softer, where or maybe I should say, they're a little bit more permeable.
Right. Well, the idea of your mother praying for the idea of loving your enemy.
Yeah.
Real deal.
I texted her, I said, it's your fault because you prayed for their salvation. I didn't. I was like, yeah, strong girl. Yeah. I'm like, Mom's like, well, I really do. I pray for their salvation. I have them on my prayer list.
But we don't know how these actions are quiet and behind the scenes, and maybe that's it.
Prayer,
is
absolutely.
That us standing up for ourselves doesn't have to look be an action of girl on hip, strong woman. It can be being softened, praying for a soft heart.
Yeah. Help me to want a soft heart.
Yes.
Which is mine for a long time.
Seriously.
Because I didn't want.
And then not speaking. Yeah. But speaking to the Lord God Almighty and listening.
Yep. Absolutely.
Oh, that's you just help me. I just feel like light years. The Lord is just moving us in some ways that are just really interesting.
But I love how you were fought for, and like how God literally
it was precious.
Knowing the situation.
It was precious.
You needed that.
I did need that.
You needed that. It needed to be from a man too.
And who knows? Had I spouted off at somebody, or had I even just carried that, I was carrying it in a different way, just hurt, not had I carried it in anger. Who knows? But it was all around and all, it's been a blessing.
Do you feel like that burden is kind of lifted?
It is all gone.
Wow.
It is gone. all I see are lessons from this. I'm really glad we had this podcast.
I am too. This is therapy.
I was like, yay. Yay. So people listen to it, like and subscribe.
Please comment. Berate me for the F-bomb. Let me know if...
Oh, no,
Just kidding.
We won't do that. Let us know how you have a conflict or where you are standing.
In the comments below.
Yes.
Oh, and no, that was wrong. Below. There.
We say peace out.
Peace.
Yeah.
Hey, great.
Bye.
Yay.
Hey, I'm Renee Leonard Kennedy.
And I am Anna Gray Smith.
And we make up
Moral Tea Podcast.
Yes, we're so glad that you're listening to us, and we want to encourage you to like and subscribe at
Moral Tea Podcast on YouTube,
at pray.com,
and Instagram at Moral Tea Podcast.
Yes.
We will catch you every Monday.
Bye.
Peace.